The Titanic was one of the largest ships ever built. It was considered unsinkable, and then it sank. After the accident, life went on. People moved on. The survivors moved on. But some of them never truly recovered. Their lives were forever changed. Richard Norris Williams was one of them. When the Titanic sank, he was only 21 years old, an up-and-coming tennis player from Philadelphia. He had traveled to Europe with his father, a wealthy businessman, and they were returning home. The journey was supposed to be relaxing, not a fight for their lives. It was Sunday, April 14th, 1912, just before midnight. The Titanic was sailing through the North Atlantic when it struck an iceberg. It was a glancing blow, but enough to cause significant damage below the waterline. At first, everything seemed fine. Captain Smith even joked about the little ice field they'd encountered. But as the ship slowed, the realization dawned. They were in trouble. An hour passed. Panic spread. Lifeboats were launched. People ran around the deck screaming. By now, it was clear. The captain had sent out a distress call, but help was at least an hour away. Most people rushed to the lifeboats, but Richard and his father stayed behind. They wanted to help. Maybe they could save someone else. But as they stood there, the ship began to tilt. The angle increased. The lifeboats were filling fast. Soon, it would be all or nothing. So they did what they had to do. Richard and his father jumped into the freezing water. They had a life ring between them, trying to stay close, but the current was strong. The water temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Richard knew if they stayed together, they might drown, so he let go. He tried to keep calm, to focus on anything but the biting cold seeping into his bones. All around him, people were calling out for help. Some were shouting for joy when they saw the lifeboats approaching. Then the light went out of their eyes, their heads dropped, and the water swallowed their screams. One by one, people disappeared beneath the waves, pulled under by the freezing water. The sky was dark, the clouds thick. No stars were visible. It was hard to tell how long he'd been in the water. Time lost all meaning. Finally, he saw a faint light in the distance. As it grew, he realized it was the stern light of a ship. Hope surged through him. He waved his arms, he yelled. The ship was coming closer. Richard was certain he'd be saved. But then the boat sailed past. He didn't see him. He looked down at the life ring. It was heavy, useless. He flung it away. What was he waiting for? Grabbed onto a piece of debris floating nearby and closed his eyes, praying for rescue. But sleep brought only more pain. His dreams were filled with water, with drowning. He opened his eyes, shivering uncontrollably. Then he saw the boat again. This time it was coming straight for him. The men on board spotted him, and in the next moment, strong hands pulled him out of the icy water. He was placed on a lifeboat and wrapped in blankets. Someone rubbed his chest, trying to warm him up. And he remembered the other survivors telling him, "Don't die. Stay alive." He thought, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can live. He learned later that the ship was called Collapsible A. It was one of the last boats to reach the Titanic. And when it did, most of the passengers and crew had perished. Of the 2,224 people on board the Titanic that night, only 705 survived. Richard was among the lucky ones. He was taken off the lifeboat and placed on the deck of another ship, the captain of the rescue vessel, the captain of the Carpathia. Noticed that Williams was still conscious and rushed him inside to the infirmary. There they put him in a hot bath, dried his body, and gave him hot tea. He was alive, but barely. His clothes were frozen stiff. The doctors cut them off, exposing skin that was covered in small red dots, the start of severe frostbite. His lower legs were especially badly affected. They were black, swollen, and almost lifeless. The medical team knew that amputation was necessary. Without it, gangrene would set in, and the infection could kill him. But Williams refused to accept his fate, insisted he would get better without the operation. The doctors agreed to wait, but they gave him an ultimatum. If his condition worsened, they would operate. Williams spent several days in the infirmary, fighting the cold, fighting to live. He was wrapped in blankets, given hot drinks, and watched over by the ship's doctor. Every few hours, he was helped to stand up and walk around. Pain shot through him, white-hot and unbearable. But he pushed on. As days turned into nights, something remarkable happened. Color returned to his legs. The swelling went down. Frostbite, while severe, hadn't taken full hold. The doctors were amazed. They'd given him a 5% chance of survival. Now it seemed he might keep his legs. And so he did. Richard Norris Williams recovered. The headlines around the world proclaimed the miracle of his survival. He'd beaten the odds. He'd stared death in the face and emerged victorious. But it wasn't just luck. It was his refusal to give up. It was his will to live. But the real test was yet to come. When he returned to New York, he was greeted as a hero. Reporters crowded around him seeking his story. But Williams wasn't ready to talk about the sinking of the Titanic. He didn't want pity. He didn't want to be known as a survivor. He wanted to be known for more. So he threw himself into tennis. He trained harder, played more matches. The public followed him around the country, watching his every move, eager to see if he could really make a comeback. At Wimbledon that year, the crowd stood up and applauded as he entered the court. Williams returned the smiles and waves, grateful for their support but determined to earn their respect. That year, 1912, he and his partner won the U.S. Men's Doubles Championship. The following year, the U.S. Open was held, and Williams won again. In 1916, he made it to the semifinals of Wimbledon. He was considered the greatest tennis player in the world, but Williams didn't rest on his laurels. He wanted more. He wanted to represent his country, to compete for gold. So he trained for the Olympics. In 1924, his dream came true. He was selected to be part of the U.S. Olympic team. He and his partner, Hazel Whiteman, won the mixed doubles competition, bringing home the gold medal. Now, people cheered for him, not because he was a survivor, but because he was a champion. He had come back from the brink of death to win. Not one, not two, but 3 major titles. His life was a testament to the power of the human spirit. He was awarded the French Legion of Honor for his heroism in the sinking of the Titanic. But he also received something more valuable: the respect and admiration of his peers and fans. He was Richard Norris Williams, the man who survived the Titanic and went on to become a legend. But tennis wasn't his only passion. In 1917, he enlisted in the army during World War I. He served in France and was awarded the Croix de Guerre for his bravery. After the war, he returned to civilian life, becoming the president of the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. He dedicated his life to helping others, serving on the board of directors of the American Red Cross and the YMCA throughout his life. He rarely spoke about the Titanic. To him, it was a part of his past, but not his present or future. In 1957, Richard Norris Williams was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. He died on January 4th, 1968. At the age of 77, he left behind a legacy of courage, determination, and hope. How do you survive the unthinkable? For Richard Norris Williams, survival wasn't enough. He chose to live fully, fearlessly, and with purpose. If you found this story inspiring, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves history and sports. This is one of many forgotten stories that deserve to be told. See you in the next video.